The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome, everybody. Keefer and Kurre is on the air on TKR. Kip Keefer and Tony Kurre. We come to you each week with whatever's on our mind. And for the third time in 4 weeks, Tony, I've got something on my mind.
Damn!
I might need to go to the Mayo Clinic and get checked out. I don't know if somebody is telepathically controlling me now that I'm not aware of.
Normally I do not like this, and I'll tell you why. Because, and I learned this at a very early age. They said if you ever want to sound good on the radio, make sure you pick the topics, right? Because now think about this, because if you're picking the topics, it's something you're passionate about. It's something you know about. It's something you've done some research about. And so you're always going to sound super smart. But when you allow someone else to pick the topic, sometimes you have to play. So this is kind of fun for me to not even have a clue. I know it's something about sports-related stuff. I pretend to know a little bit about sports, so I think I can hang with you. But nevertheless, I'm very excited about it. What you got, bro?
Well, I want to start on the positive note, because this is a positive and a realist kind of approach. It's the two-part thing here. I saw something on Friday night in Atlanta on television here in my secret bunker out in Trussville on my theater screen. I witnessed something that really inspired me, and as I learned more about it, it is really a microcosm, Tony, of why we love sports. And here it is. The Braves, who won their opening game on Thursday, came back on, actually this was Saturday night. They came back on Saturday night with their second game against the Kansas City Royals. They trailed 2-0 going to the bottom of the ninth. They had done nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing offensively. Yeah. Being shut out. They got a couple of guys on. They got a base hit, made it 2-1. Then a walk, bases loaded, and the batter was a guy named Dominic Smith. Now, Dominic Smith has been in the major league 7 or 8 years. This is a guy that came up through the Mets organization, was highly touted. He was like the number one prospect in their minor league system. They threw him in at first base for a year for the Mets. He didn't have a great year. Only batted like 245. He was kind of considered a disappointment. And then the very next year, a very devastating thing happened to Dominic Smith's career. They drafted a guy by the name of Pete Alonso. Mm-hmm. And Pete Alonso, who's become he's a 6'5" guy who can hit it from out of any park, like Harry Carey say, including Yellowstone. Pete Alonso supplanted Dominic Smith at first base because he was a much more productive hitter and actually a better defensive player. So Dominic Smith still being considered a big prospect. They tried him at third base. They tried him in left field. They tried him in right field. And his offense continued to suffer because he was playing out of position. This is a guy who was, I'm sure, had expectations of himself, just like the Mets did. Anyway, after 4 or 5 years, they finally gave up on him and dumped him off on the Washington Nationals, who were not in a real good phase in the last couple of years. Dominic Smith tried to hang with the Nationals, played a lot, but still just never really realized the station of his career. I didn't know in the offseason, down at spring training, they announced the starting lineups for the Braves and Orioles game that I attended with our partner, the Legend, and Dominic Smith was at first base. And I said, we got Dominic Smith? And it was like, well, that's kind of good. He'd be a good bench piece. Anyway, he came up in the bottom of the ninth, down 2-1, bases loaded, worked the count to 3-2, and Dominic Smith on the 3-2 pitch hit a walk-off grand slam for the Braves to win 6-2 in the game, 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth. Here's why the rest of the story. I was watching intently of him running around the bases because my first thought was, wow, this has just got to be the most wonderful retribution for this guy who has just kind of had a struggling career when everybody, including himself, I'm sure, anticipated different. But Dominic Smith had this kind of emotional look on his face and everything. And I found out that just 5 days ago, his mother had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And then he was carrying on right at the end of spring training, had to go up to break for the big club, had to go through all of that. And to find out after the game in the locker room, the support and love he was getting from his new teammates, because everybody knew what a struggle. This was a guy like all of us, and you've had the same experience. I've had it. Losing your mother, there's not a more significant, devastating loss you can possibly. That's the person who brought you into the world.
Yep.
And for this guy to be dealing with all that and have this uplifting experience, and I could see it on his face. There's some real good stuff on YouTube if you want to see more of the story, but it just it's the ultimate heartbreak, with triumph, and really, Tony, isn't that a great microcosm for what life is? The ups and downs, the twists and turns, the heartbreak, the triumphs. I just think it's one of the great sports stories of the year so far.
It's amazing to me how many times we've heard stories. We saw that with the Olympic speed skater this year. Lost his mother, father, and ended up competing. We saw it with Brett Favre. We've seen it with people at such different levels in our lives. Of course, we hear about these wonderful Major League Baseball players and football players and people that lose people because it's a story, right? And so you're going to see that story. You're going to see a 30 for 30 or whatever before a game. And sometimes you think to yourself, we think that because we got in the fetal position and we closed up and we couldn't even eulogize our mother or father because we were so distraught for days and days and days, that we're not dealing with people here that are so good at what they do that perhaps actually playing the game is the best way therapeutically to deal with what they're going through. And to know that their mother or father or wherever they've lost to that is another situation, not even to put it at the same realm, okay, in the same realm. But Saturday night, you mentioned Saturday night, my Cincinnati Reds are playing the big bad Boston Red Sox. They lose the first game on Thursday. They go up there and they're playing the Cracker Box. And this guy named Dane Myers, who I'd never heard of, I couldn't even tell you where he was from. He's played like a smattering of ball games for the Seattle Mariners over the last 3 years. He's gotten 4 at-bats all year long so far. He gets up in the bottom of the 9th inning and hits a walk-off for the Cincinnati Reds.
Wow.
And the guy's batting 400 for the season. He's got 5 at-bats so far. He just out of nowhere. Just comes off the bench in the bottom of the 9th, and you're like, who's Dane Myers?
Dane Myers.
Come to find out that he had lost his beloved 14-year-old Schnauzer earlier in the day. Now, again, I'm not talking about but it's a family member. It's a dog, and everyone's talking about. Hey, listen, do you want to do this for the? And someone in the locker room had said something like, "Do it for the Schnauzer. Do it for the Schnauzer."
Oh, wow.
And he's like kind of laughing. He gets up there, and next thing you know, he hits a walk-off against the bad Bo Sox, who, by the way, they took 2 out of 3 against. We'll take that any time. Again, I think the Reds will probably have like 75 games this year where they either score like 10 runs or they don't score anything. It's just the most bizarre thing. But anyway, another great story about how we take the problems and the challenges and the struggles of our life and we incorporate it into this wonderful thing known as sports. And it could be a soccer game for a 5-year-old. It could be a Major League Baseball game for a 23-year-old. It just is an amazing story. And I whenever I hear soft music playing on ESPN, I run over to the TV to turn it off, and I know I can't. I know it's going to be a story about someone who's got cancer, someone's come back for something, and I'm lost, and I'm like, I got to watch it because I owe it to myself to realize that I am super blessed in my life. I've been given some of the most wonderful things, including having wonderful friends like you to do shows with, and I am so blessed to be able to talk radio for a living. Man, life is good. But to hear some of the stories, yeah, man, that just means it's so much more. It's just amazing. It really is.
Well, you made me just think about last year, and I know you went to one of the events at Rickwood Field, which was a wonderful weekend for Birmingham. Beautiful. It was just a chance to kind of showcase what we have here. But my very favorite thing, or along the same lines you're talking about, that was supposed to be a celebration of Westfield, Alabama's Willie Mays was supposed to be front and center for all of that. About 2 weeks, Willie was in his 80s, of course. We got the word just a couple of days before that he was not well enough to travel. He was not going to be able to be here. And then actually the night before the game, Willie Mays passed away in New Jersey or wherever he was. And remember what his son said? This has stuck with me so much. His son said, "I can't tell you how much my father really wanted to be here for this. And guess what? Like he always did in his life, he found a way." That just was such beautiful words that Willie is here now because he found a way to be here.
And they had a ball. They had a ball game that night. I don't know if it was an actual Major League Baseball game, but there was a game that night on maybe some type of festivities. Because I remember being down there with Santo, and they made the announcement during the evening that Willie Mays had passed away, and you could tell like the announcer wanted to say, you can't make this up.
Yeah. The night before the Rickwood Classic in his honor. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, during that Major League game the following night, and gosh, I hope they do it again because Rickwood is such a gem. We got the opportunity to do the Stand Up for Cancer thing where we all got to stand up and hold the sign. I always thought, I've seen that over and over and over and over again. The first time I saw it, I thought, okay, this is a Fox thing, but they've really dedicated a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a ton of money to Stand Up for Cancer and cancer research. And so to be able to hold that sign up with my dad's name on it during that game is funny because it's crazy that you're bringing this up today because I was just cleaning up this past Saturday doing some spring cleaning, and my needs boy was like, "We're going to clean up all the stuff you've been waiting forever." And I got a basket like in the kitchen, like most guys do, with so much crap. It's got coins and golf tees and, old keys.
I've got a drawer
chains,
like that,
and an earring that for my daughter that I need to get replaced. And it's got all this junk and I never go through it. And right in the back of that basket is that Stand Up for Cancer sign.
Wow.
And my son's like, "Are you going to hold on to that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I think I am. I think I'm going to leave that there because every time I walk by that basket, I see and remember my father and all the wonderful things he did for me going down to Crosley Field and actually not paying for seats, but looking through the little peephole in the left center wall where he used to skip school and go watch baseball games every single day."
Field.
And it was great too because while I was sitting there watching March Madness this past weekend, they were going through this just wonderful mirage of all these wonderful announcements of March Madness. And one of those is one Marty Brenneman, who called the Final Four just about 10 years ago. It was the Christian Laettner shot. He actually called that on television.
Oh, man, I did not know that.
Yes, go back and listen. And I'm like, and I looked at Santa, I said, "You know who that is?" He's like, I said, "It's Marty Brenneman." He goes, Marty Brenneman called the Christian Laettner shot the game.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all kind of came full circle.
Probably, technically, to me, the best baseball announcer of all time.
And I remember he came to town, I say 6-7 years ago, so it was probably a dozen. And he was calling games at the BJCC. This is when they were getting rounds years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And he walked in front of my car, and I was with my son, and Marty had this big boof. I don't even know what you call his hair. He had this giant perfect hair thing going on. It was, and he walked right in front of my car, and I said, "Marty Brenneman, I love you." And it just came out, and he looked at me like I was the strangest dude. I think he ended up running away from my vehicle. And I was like, "No, I'm a Reds fan." He was like, "Okay, see ya." And he ran but he was walking by himself outside the BJCC. So, it just kind of came full circle and all those things, but. Yeah, man.
You remember his standard because he worked with the great Joe Nuxhall for many years. Yep. The old left-hander who started his baseball career during World War II at 15 years old.
15 years old, still the youngest ball player ever. Can you imagine when I looked at my son when he was 15, I was like, do you imagine him starting a Major League Baseball game? That is ridiculous. Round third and head for home.
Heading for home. And Marty that would be Joe's wrap up. Mm-hmm. But Marty went, "And this one belongs to the Reds." That was what he said when they would get the last out.
That was the first thing. There was an album that came out 1975, 76, 76, 77 when the Reds went back to back in the Big Red Machine. I still have the albums. I don't know what they're worth, but I'd never sell them. And it was all of the Cincinnati Reds' greatest hits from those 2 years. And my dad bought those albums, and I remember listening to those. That was the first thing out of Marty's mouth every time they won a ball game. If it was a grand slam, he would say, "And it's a grand slam," and then you waited for it. And this one belongs to the Reds. And I mean, I got goosebumps. I mean, I got goosebumps just saying that. And I mean, that whole album was full of this one belongs to the Reds. There was old saying that, Joe Nuxall, who liked to have himself a hoodah pole on many a nights.
Or 5 or 6.
If 4, 5, or 6, you really wanted to hear a great ball game, listen to the second half of a day-night doubleheader with Joe. And it was just, he was known, he would come into the studio or, into the booth, and he'd be running late. And he'd have to make up a half an inning on the radio. And so for people that were listening to the radio, they weren't there, so they didn't know what was going on. This is when baseball games weren't on television. And he'd go, and he struck him out. And he goes, and then he'd go, strike one. Strike two, strike three, and he strikes him out. And you're like, well, wow, this guy's pitching really fast. Yeah. And he would roll through like 4 or 5 players in the course of about 2 minutes to get caught up.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, my gosh. I'm like, my dad's like, wow, he struck that guy out. He must just taken the bat, went back and forth 3 times and struck him out. Oh, it was fantastic. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, they were a great broadcast team.
The great Al Michaels used to actually call the games.
There. Yeah. I was so blessed. I've told you the story before, but when we first moved to Atlanta in the mid-'60s, the Braves had just come. My next-door neighbor was Dennis Menke, the shortstop for the Atlanta Braves. Greatest thing could ever happen to a 9-year-old. Just inconceivable. Met so many big leaguers. Mrs. Menke took me to games just about one every series. So I'm sitting behind the plate in the family section. Wow. It was just awesome. But in the last parts of his career, Dennis was traded to Houston, which was a dark day for me. But then he was acquired by the Reds in 1971 in that big trade that involved Lee May, and it was like a 5-player swap.
I forgot all about him.
Dennis Menke went to the Reds and played third base on the 72 Redlegs. Mm-hmm. That was the beginning of the Big Red Machine. They lost that 7-game series to the Oakland A's. I'm sure you remember.
The Oakland A's were really good then too, man.
Yeah, and Dennis Menke is actually the guy who hit one of the most famous plays in the game. He had a drive with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 7th in the 6th game where the Reds could have wrapped it up. And Joe Rudy made one of the most famous World Series catches of all time, climbing the wall and taking a home run away from my next door neighbor.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, my friend Jim Heverin was still my best friend to this day, and we got to get him over here to be on the starting lineup. You would absolutely love this. He has got the best baseball card collection. He has been just a fanatic about it, and he's got a museum quality. It's probably worth $1 million. I'm just going to say he gets all of his cards certified and put in plastic, and it's just amazing. But Jim was from Cincinnati. He was from Fort Thomas, Kentucky, right across the river, and we used to go up 2 or 3 times and stay with his grandparents and go to Reds games. Dennis Menke would hook me up with tickets when I was in 9th or 10th grade. It was great. What a great thing.
Unfortunately, and I know you got so many great stories you could tell about being with your boys and now your grandsons and your granddaughter, who, by the way, is going to be turning 1 next week. I know you're looking forward to it. I was listening to the show. It's fantastic. I only went to 1 baseball game a year, and that was if you got straight A's. The Reds had a program where if you got straight A's, you got a pair of tickets for a baseball game, which they should do.
What a great promotion.
It really was. And man, it was the only time of the year I got straight A's, man. And my dad and I would go, and it's the only baseball game we ever went to once a year. But I knew my dad's like, I know you're getting straight A's because I know you want to go down and see the Cincinnati Reds. But those times, man, they're special, and they are what they are because they are what they are. There are special times during our lives when life was simpler and it was easier, and we didn't have phones and we didn't have all this crap going on.
And the thrill when you're a kid of walking in those stadiums and walking down, just seeing how green the grass is, and
the smell.
Yeah, it's just such a out-of-body experience. I'm really in a big league ballpark. I mean, I wish I still had that kind of wonderment and awe today, because it is. My dad took me to a game when I was 5 years old, and that was a long, long time ago, but I remember it was the Senators and the Yankees at DC Stadium. We lived in Metro Washington, and walking in that stadium and seeing that environment, it's something I'll never forget. I mean, it's burned in my memory.
I wonder if college athletes now will ever understand what it was like to go play night in and night out just for the W.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, everyone's playing for money. Everyone's getting paid for money. Everyone wants to have a great season for the money. It's all about the money. It's everything. And I mean, almost everyone's getting paid. But to think just 3 or 4 years ago when you got people like, well, maybe if you'd had some attached to something, they'd be playing harder. These kids were student athletes. They went out there and they played for the love of the game and nothing. But now they could have been playing for their next. They could have been playing for the next round. They could have been playing for a championship. Certainly, they could have been playing for their future. There's no doubt. But when you're talking less than 1% that go to the next level, that's a lot of athletes, 26,000 athletes who are doing it just for the pure love of the game. And we will never have that again, ever.
Yeah. And as you and I have talked about, in those days, those guys would take a couple of days off at the end of the season, and they had to get jobs during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the early part of the year before you go to spring training because they weren't making the big money. They didn't have long-term contracts. That's why guys never came out of the lineup in those days. I mean, the scorecard you'd get when you buy a scorecard for a quarter when you went to a game, they had the lineup printed in there because the lineup was pretty much the same every day because these guys were not going to miss a game because somebody might take their place. It's a whole different era, and that's why Tony Kurre is the broadcast pro, because from a segue standpoint, talking about the money, the other thing I wanted to get your reaction to, and I know we went long on the baseball, but that's fine because baseball's my greatest love still.
Yes.
But I wanted to get your opinion because I sounded off on Saturday morning on my show on WJOX in Birmingham on Game Time. I looked at John Saber, my producer, and looked over at the legend sitting next to me in the broadcast booth, and I said, guys, I've got something to confess here. I'm going to come off as the ultimate ugly American, but I've just got to say this. I don't like college basketball being completely invaded and infused with this Eastern European invasion. I don't want to watch Ivan Drago leading teams to the Final Four, 7-foot robotic guys that don't even speak English, that are supposedly enrolled in colleges, but they're just there once again for the money. You know that's why they're there. I think they're taking spots from American players that would love to be in that position. I don't like the importation of Ivan Drago, who I'm thinking right before they tip off goes, I will destroy you. I'm sorry that if that makes me an ugly American, so be it.
No, it does not. It makes you a right American because I could not agree with you more, man. I am like so over the European movement and where they were like, what about Badako? That does not count because he actually played college ball first. That's the difference. And there is a huge difference in the fact you played college first and then went on.
These guys are 25, 26, 27 years old. They've played 4 or 5 years of professional basketball where they live. No
doubt. It used to be if you had a guy, and I'm trying to think, Gino Torretta, who was 23 or 24, that was outstanding. I was like, what? 23, 24-year-old? It was because he had medical issues. It was all for real. The NCAA had to say it was okay to do that. And now you got guys 25, 26 years old. You got 7'2" guys, in college, you're still growing. You got guys 7 foot coming. Look at Michigan's top 5. I don't know if they got a European guys, but people are talking. I mean, by the way, that game's going to be unbelievable. That Michigan Arizona game is going to be
those two
off
teams
the chart.
We knew how good Arizona was. We saw them here in Birmingham. But Illinois got 4 guys in their 7-man rotation, all from Europe.
And guess what? They're in the Final Four.
Like it. I know it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you, and I think it's going to change the face. That's one of the things they've got to look into. They can look at the transfer portal. They can look at the NIL. They can look at the $20.1 million whatever it is, the top of the money you could spend, but they've got to look, and I don't think they're even discussing that, they've got to look into, it's hard enough to recruit the United States of America, but recruiting these players from Europe who are going to come over here, and it's just, because I mean, a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute, first of all, I can't pronounce anyone's name. You can always pronounce guys in college. In the pros, they always go outside. The European leagues all over
the pros is different.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this is just another bit of evidence. We can't go back. We can't fill Pandora's box back up. We can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We can't lure the genie back into the bottle. It's out. College sports is basically professional sports now, and we're just going to have to find a way to deal with it because I have one final thing, because I know you're in contact with Mark Ingram. You do shows with him, Mark, the athletic director at UAB. There's been a lot of controversy here after basically a UAB transfer dismantled Alabama and sent them home, that Alabama, Lettenborg said after the game that I would have given Alabama a serious look, but they didn't even try to recruit me. I want you to ask Mark Ingram for me if there's some kind of they're in the same university system. I wonder if there's some kind of hands-off kind of a thing going on between Alabama and UAB. I think if Lettenborg had been at Samford, I think Alabama would have been all over him. But the fact that he was at UAB, I wonder if it's Alabama's arrogance too, that we're not going to go try to get a UAB guy. That would be giving them credibility. I think it's more that. Absolutely. Kip, I think it's more that we're never going to recruit an Alabama basketball player because we don't recruit Alabama basketball players. That's a totally different level. We got our own. I can't imagine Nate Oates actually going down South Side and snooping around looking for a basketball player. But the truth of the matter is, he's the best basketball player Michigan's got. One of the best. He's averaging like 24. It's unbelievable. And of course, he played 2 years. Two years and was loyal to Andy Kennedy. Stayed, and he could have left after his freshman year, but he played 2 years.
And my son and I were sitting there watching him. Of course, every time they said, UAB transfer, Axel Lindenberg, and I'm thinking to myself, damn it. But I mean, kudos to him. Good for him. I mean, he not only did it for the money, but he's going to be a first rounder in the NBA.
Oh yeah,
he could have averaged 35 at UAB, and he wouldn't go first round from UAB. No, it's just not, because UAB is not known to being great basketball players. They've had several, they've had a couple, but I mean, the fact that he's doing what he's doing at Michigan right now, and of course, you're never going to play for a national championship at UAB ever. You're never going to play. You might play for an NIT championship, but you're never going to play for a national championship at UAB, period. Not in my lifetime, not in the next lifetime, but you will at Alabama, and that was the most important thing, and Michigan. So that was the most important thing for him. So good for him. He's a hell of a player.
I just wonder how much the Alabama UAB drama played into that. I'm really curious. Yeah, I think that's a fascinating subject.
I'll ask him.
Because this guy, and I looked up his background last night. I assumed he was probably his name is Yaxel Lindenborg. I thought he was probably Ukrainian or something. Do you know, Tony? He was born in Puerto Rico of Dominican parents. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is the last place I expected to find out that he was from.
Yes, he is, and speaks very good English too.
Oh, yeah. So, a fascinating character. But right now, people are saying the Big Ten is superior. They're kicking the SEC's butt in all sports. Well, the reason is because they're ahead of the curve in recognizing where to go to get players and having the money to exploit that, where SEC teams are still kind of, I wish it was 2001. Or, actually, the date was 2000 on June 21st, 2021. The U.S. Supreme Court voted 9-0 against the NCAA that players can be compensated. Tony, that day, if you had the NCAA plus 8.5 justices, you lost. It was 9-0. So,
well, you know what? We got to give it to the Big Ten. You know why? Because they haven't won an NCAA tournament
in 25
years, which really is almost like impossible. I mean, I want you to think about that, because everyone talked about football's king down in the South, Texas, Alabama, Florida. Why? Because we've got beautiful weather year round, and it's got to be good basketball wise up in the Midwest. Because why? Because everyone's gym rats when it's snowing 15, 16 inches. That's why you have a movie called Hoosiers and not Crimson Tiders. Okay. That's why you have great point. That's why you have great Ohio State basketball teams. You have all these wonderful teams. You have great teams from DePaul. You have all these one. That's because they play up there. So the fact that they have not won a national title in 25 years is incredible. So if they want to win one this year, I'm good with it.
Yeah, well, and Arizona might get in the way of that.
Yeah, they could.
It really kind of sucks that Arizona and Michigan, clearly the two best teams to make it to the Final Four, have to play first. We
should recede, really, my friend. Recede.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Illinois got
because the other game. Did you really think UConn or Illinois has any chance against who wins that game? I don't think so.
I do not. I do not think. Certainly, Illinois is on the outside looking in. They're the only team going, wow, what the hell did we do to get here? And maybe it's because it's 4 European players you're talking about.
Well, that's the thing. The Big Ten has a more progressive commissioner, and they have a lot more money. As my partner Terry Quillian pointed out recently, we've seen this movie before. When the North squares off against the South, it comes down to economics, and we know how that comes out. No. And right now, they've got the bigger alumni bases, the bigger financial support, boosters and whatnot. The SEC has got to, come up with some strategy. And if it means, like Legend said yesterday on Saturday's show, he says, they don't get on a plane, go to Eastern Europe, don't come back unless you got some 7-footers.
Really?
If that's how the game is played now, you can't wish that it was 2020 again. It's not. Everything's changed. This is professional sports now, and the Big Ten commissioner Tony Soprano is playing everybody like a fiddle to get just what he wants.
No doubt. Great stuff, my friend. We'll do it again this Saturday. The starting lineup. It is going to be Easter weekend. So here comes Peter Cottontail. I imagine we'll be doing something around Easter, something on the show on Saturday. So we'll look forward to that. We'll be looking for some Easter eggs, maybe.
Absolutely. Baseball's back.
Baseball's back. Yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Yeah, Tony, enjoyed it.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.